If you're driving in Akron, Iowa, a massive Victorian home may catch your eye.
The home serves as the Akron Area Historical Museum. KTIV's Clayton Anderson stopped by to see all the history in the home in this episode of Hometown History.
This house was started in 1903, completed in 1906 for the Boyson Ross family. They had 7 children. He was the son of Duncan Ross, who was an immigrant from Scotland, and they made a fortune in grain and banking.
Inside the Akron Area Museum, which sits inside of this gigantic Victorian-style home, is artifacts that are donated that represent all the influential people from Akron, Iowa, and surrounding areas. One of those influential people was Tom Lias, who grew up right down the street from what is now the museum. He served as an aide for, at the time, Vice President George H.W. Bush and former President Richard Nixon. Under Bush, he was ambassador to the United Nations. Carol Brown, one of the museum volunteers, says they don't turn many artifacts away. She says she is appreciative of the community support and preserving history encourages people to check the museum out.
I mean, we have no tax dollars. We are independently, financially independent of any tax dollars or anything. So we have to write grants and stuff, but we have a lot of members. And we stay on top of the membership thing, and we send out renewals often, and the community's been very generous to support us financially.
The museum showcases items from the schools in the area, household items, clothes, artifacts representing local businesses, and military items such as honoring a native that was on the USS Indianapolis, and much more. The pride in history can also be seen in how the community preserves the town and invests in the future.
We have a lot going on in Akron. We have a brand new wonderful swimming pool. We have a very active group of parents that raise funds for different events that help children.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of Hometown History from Akron, Iowa. Make sure you join us next time to see what adventure we get into and where we go next. In Akron, Iowa, Clayton Anderson, KTIV News 4.